Welcome to Decision Space, the only show that takes place right here in the space between the turns in your favorite games. I'm Jake Friedman.
And I'm Brendan Hansen.
And this is the podcast about decisions in games.
Today, we're talking freshies. Because Jake attended Geekway to the West, a convention in St. Louis this past weekend, and he was out of his mind, and he played 14 different games. So I know that he is very excited to talk about them. We hear feedback from listeners all the time that you don't know the difference between Jake, the other host, and myself, Brendan's voice. So I hope that this part of the episode gives you a sense for whose voice is whose. Again, this is Brendan speaking, and Jake is going to be the person speaking for most of this episode. But in this episode, Jake's going to do mini reviews of these 14 games. I don't know if he committed to that. I committed Jake to that. Mini reviews on these 14 games, and he's going to talk about the most interesting part of their decision spaces. I don't know if he committed to that. I committed him to that. And I'm here to help steer the Interdecisional Spaceship and keep us on track. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, it's going to be super fun. I'm really excited to talk about all these awesome games I got to play. And this is kind of new for us. We haven't done anything like this before. We should say welcome to all our new listeners. Last week's episode did really well. It was so fun and exciting to have T win on our show. What a great conversation. And it's been incredibly rewarding to see the reaction to it. People are on Twitter talking about how they're buying his book now, excited about that. So that was awesome. And if you're new here, welcome. We're so happy to have you.
And in classic Decision Space fashion, you're coming into an episode that has very little to do with most of the episodes we've done historically, which means we're innovating, and that's a good place to be. Pre-planners, next week we're covering That's So Clever is the American title, or Gonchon's Clever, which if you're, I feel like the cool kids in the board game community always have to use the German titles, at least for this series. I think that's kind of faded, but for this series specifically, people always use the German title. I don't know why. But so we're just going to talk about the first game because that's the one Jake and I have played the most. Maybe the second game a little bit, maybe not. We'll see. I bought it. I haven't played it, but I bought it.
Not to be confused with actually hot game right now, So Clover. That couldn't be us.
I even read our notes and I was like, Jake, I'm not prepped for So Clover. And I wrote the notes. So, yeah. No, it's Wolfgang Warsch's That's So Clever, the roll and write game, not the one with the shamrock. Okay, Jake, we don't have time. 14 games. What are you, crazy? Let's get into it.
All right, let's do it. Where should we start?
Well, what's Geekway?
Okay, that's a great place to start. Geekway to the West is St. Louis's premier board game convention. And I actually think it's like just a premier board game convention.
It's really growing.
Kind of on the map. It's not Origins, it's not Gen Con, but I think like right below that, it's right there. A lot of people travel here from everywhere. There's great representation from publishers. I saw Stephen Bonacore walking around. And St. Louis, if you don't know, is actually a board gaming hub. I don't want to try and name all the gaming companies that we have here, but there's a ton of them.
Yeah.
Stonemaier Games is the one that everyone knows, but yeah, I'm not going to go into it. But there's like 4 or 5 game publishers here. I just don't want to forget somebody and then get in trouble. So they're all here. There was a ton of play and win games. And I don't know how many people are at this convention, but I mean, the St. Charles, which is, kind of part of the St. Louis metropolitan area convention center, is like filled up with gaming. And I think one thing that is more unique about Geekway to other conventions, the only other one I've really been to is Origins. Origins felt like, more of like a game exhibit show. There's like huge exhibit room. This doesn't really have that. And what it does instead is just like put the focus on like playing games. So, this is like a convention for playing games. That is the thing that absolutely everybody is doing all the time. And just like what fun to get back to an experience like that after so long.
Yeah, it's so cool. And I love conventions that are game playing conventions. I think everyone going to a convention of that sort and sort of being in that mindset leads to people trying new games, maybe trying games you wouldn't ever be able to try. I'm sure there's a really big library at Geekway where you get to check out games. Jake's nodding good. Definitely. That's awesome. And that's such a cool experience, just having at your fingertips hundreds of games, thousands of games that have come out in the last 3, 5, 7, 10 years. Most of the games you played are new games, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say about it was just probably the experience that I liked the most about it was getting to like sit down with a bunch of people that have like come to play games just as much as I have. Where I feel like so often in my life I'm the most into games at the table, right? If I have friends coming over to play games, it's like I'm presenting the game. I'm kind of like cultivating a game to somebody else's taste and like thinking about like why somebody might like this game. Where at a board game convention, right, that all goes out the window. You're like, you want to play Boonlake? It's going to take like 4 hours. And everybody's like, hell yeah, I'm down. And it's like, that's not something I get to really experience in real life. So, it felt like a vacation right here in St.
It can
Louis
be
where
a
I just got to do my favorite thing.
totally. It can be so much fun to drive the car, but it's also fun to get to sit in the passenger seat sometimes.
Totally. All right, let's now get into some of these games. So, are we just going to go down the list here as we have
Yeah,
them?
let's do it. Is that okay?
Yeah, perfect.
I started. Okay, so to let everyone know, Jake got Concierge Surface this week, so I put together some notes based on a list of games he provided. So he doesn't know the order that we're discussing the games in, and we're starting with one that he played the most.
Yes, which was Riftforce, a 2021 release by Capstone Games, and I think it might be in their like family game line, so a kind of a smaller game designed by Carlo Bortolini. And so, just super brief overview of Riftforce. It is a kind of card game where you are mages dueling, in the vein of like Magic the Gathering type of theme and like experience, but it's like that like crossed with like very much like a Eurogame sensibility, like something like a Reiner Knizia game, really. And so it's basically this like kind of Magic the Gathering battle distilled down into like these incredibly simple component parts. So in the game of Riftforce, you have you will construct your deck as like the first phase of the game. So there are 10 different, I don't know what they're called, but like spirits or something like that, like in the game. And you do a draft of these. You like deal everybody one, or it's only a 2-player game. So each person gets randomly dealt one. And then you'll discard one and then you'll draft 7 remaining until you both have 4 spirits. And then you will get their respective deck, which is just numbers on cards. So like there's like the light spirit, and that deck is just it has like the sun power and it has like damage but also healing, which makes it special. And that deck is just cards numbered 5, 6, and 7. And there's like 3, or I think there's more 5s than 7s, but it's like 10 or 12 cards or something. And all the decks are constructed exactly the same, except for instead of sun, you'll have like water, and that spirit has a slightly different power.
And different values?
No, the same. So every value in the game, it's either a 5, a 6, or a 7.
Interesting.
And that represents its life. So like once like a 5 card gets dealt 5 damage, it's dead, and your opponent gets 1 of 12 rift points that they'll need to win the game. But the mechanism that makes this game so awesome is that on your turn, you have 3 options. The first is you can play your spirits down on the board. And the board is just 5 lanes. So you have 5 5 columns on your side, and your opponent has 5 columns on their side. So you can put down a card to one column, and you can play up to 3 cards, but they have to all be either the same spirit type or the same number. And you can place them all in the same lane, or you can put them adjacent to each other. Next, after playing, you can activate, and this is where the game gets really fun. So to activate, you can activate all up to 3 spirits of the same type or 3 spirits of the same number. But in order to activate them, you have to discard that spirit type or that number. And like there is the rub of the game, because you want to play down like all 3 5s, but then you're not going to have a 5 to activate, and to redraw up to your maximum hand size. Well, that's like the third action you could take on your turn. So it's just like this absolutely delicious puzzle of tempo, of trying to like identify the right opportunities to take a beat to draw back up. You can also score points if like when you're drawing your hand, you have lanes with spirits in it that are uncontested on your opponent's side. So there's also like this kind of like area control game going on. And it's just an incredibly slick design, incredibly simple game. But the thing I love the most about it is like I played it 3 times. I checked this game out from the library 3 times, and every time I showed it to somebody, I liked it more and like was learning something new about the game. It's like the first game I was like just got destroyed, and like but I was like, oh okay, I should have done these things differently. And then next time I played somebody else, I like won kind of a close game. I was like starting to piece it together, and then the third time I played somebody, I just like absolutely mopped the floor with them. And so like that revealed to me like there was like an immense amount of like mastery possible in this slight box, and it's like a small box. And yeah, so I mean, I think this game was probably there's one other game in contention for like my game of the con, but like I think what they've done with this game, like how much game you get in this box, like each of the different spirit powers can combine with other ones differently. Like I feel like this game alone is just countless hours of fun to explore it if you had somebody who wanted to explore it with you. And I really think like for our Keyforge fans that listen to this podcast, like you have to try Riftforce.
As a Knizia fan who loves Keyforge, it seems like this game is probably something I need to play.
You will love
Jake.
this game, dude.
Yeah,
and you will definitely love it.
Okay. The fact that it's only a 2-player game is really interesting. The art is by Miguel Coimbra, who you can tell that Capstone really believes in this game because he's the artist behind Seven Wonders Duel, Seven Wonders, Small World, Cyclades, a lot of really heavy-hitting games of the past decade. So they clearly wanted to invest a lot of resources in it.
It's funny that you say that though, because like that's
you
my
don't love
only
the art?
criticism of the game. No, I think like the art is totally fine. I don't know, like maybe a little generic. Like the art on the box like could be like ripped straight off like a Magic the Gathering pack from like 2001.
I feel like that's kind of this. I don't mean this in a mean way. That might be Miguel Coimbra's aesthetic a little bit, like a little bit generic.
Yeah. Well, that's fine. Like my criticism is actually that like so there's like 5, 6, and 7 of like the plant suit, and 5, 6, and 7 of the water suit, and like all the water cards look the same. It's the same art, and that just feels like a little bit lazy, almost like. Maybe it's an accessibility thing. Like it makes it like a little easier to be like, oh yeah, these are all the same type. But like, you could put an icon on it. And I honestly think that like this game is such an excellent bridge, maybe like the best ever bridge for like somebody who's into like Magic the Gathering or like a specific dueling card game to like bring them into like a Euro game and be like, oh, there's like something to this. And I honestly think like somebody who played a lot of Magic would like look at that art decision of having the same art on each card and be like, what the hell is this? Like that alone to me makes it feel like more like a dry Euro game than like anything else in it. You know what I mean? Because like it just makes it be like that could just be like a 5 of diamonds now because like all the like you could just have like the 7 plant look a little more like epic, right? It's like stronger. That's all.
And it's not impossible. The game was play tested at first with like a deck of cards like that.
For sure.
So that's super interesting.
So it's a nitpick, but I honestly think it's like a pretty big oversight.
Scale of 1 to 10. Chances that Maya likes this based on the things you know about Maya.
I think like 8, 9.
Okay.
I wouldn't say 10 because like I just don't know Maya's taste that well. But I think it would be a huge hit for you. I don't think it's something I could play with Bridget.
Sure.
Like I think it's like too fighty. Honestly.
Interesting.
And that again, it goes to like the theme because like this game could so easily be like a Knizia game where it's like shepherds tending to like these different fields, like it could like or whatever.
That gets me excited.
It could be anything.
Yeah, and they picked wizards dueling.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. So anyway, that's Riftforce. Like super high recommend for me. I think like wide appeal and like tons of mastery in this box. Like for the decision space people that are like into rich decisions with a slight rule set, like you will find hours of enjoyment in this game, no doubt.
Amazing. Okay, the next game, Jake. Are we going to throw it in the Bonfire? Because this game is Bonfire from Stefan Feld, a 2020 release that I swear the rulebook is, oh my god, this game. You go.
Okay, so Bonfire, I think, is the only game on this list. I'm scrolling down. Well, I guess there's like a slight exception, but pretty much the only game on this list that I had played before going to this con. But I've only ever played it asynchronously on Yukata,
Yep.
and I would say that that is not an ideal environment to play this game because this is like, a Steffenfeld to like the Feld degree point salad game where you have uh all kinds of different nonsense going on in this game. So like in Bonfire, there's the theme is like your gnomes trying to like reignite the great bonfire, which is like on the board, and like your player board is like has all these other little signal bonfires that you're building, but those are really just like tasks that you're like trying to fulfill. And when you do fulfill them, you get to put like one of the elders from the middle board onto like a common. No, you get to put one of your elders onto one of the special bonus tasks on the main board. And then like once you achieve like a common goal, then you get to put like one of the neutral elders to do like a special action. And everything you do in this game, you're not going to believe this, gets you points.
Then you summon the judge from the hinterlands. This game is Codes of Dunshire.
Yeah, it really is feel like that, but it's kind of fun. Like, all joking aside, like the theme is a little bit interesting. Like the resource components have like weird different shapes. Like it's not just like gold or
But it's like fruit
wheat.
and
Yeah, exactly. It is. It's like a root that looks like a skull, and like
sure.
a blue flower that has like 5 points on it. I don't know, but like it's kind of fun playing in person to have these like wooden bits that are like
Mm.
different shapes than you've seen before in games. So I was really excited to play it. It was actually one of the games I wanted to play the most because having played that async experience and like liking it, but feeling like something is just like not coming together with this game, that kind of like kept me off being like, yeah, I think it's like a great game. I just wanted to see what the on the table experience would be.
Did it come together?
I ended up playing a 2-player game with a friend, Dave, and Dave is a guy I met at like a Geekway in like 2019, and like
Nice.
ran into him here, reconnected, and we like played games together like all weekend, and it
That's
was
awesome.
awesome. So anyway, I taught Dave this game, and we played 2-player, teach, play. I think we were done in 60 minutes or less. Like it's just like this game is so much quicker than it really seems like it would be from kind of these like arduous asynchronous experiences. And I mean, I'm a fast player, and so is Dave. So that was part of the reason why we were able to like get through so many games and have such an awesome time. But yeah, I was impressed by how much this one flew by, and I mean, I had a really good time with it. It's hard to recommend it. Like, I don't know, it is more complex than like Castles of Burgundy, and I think like so it's hard to say, and it is very similar in a lot of ways. So it's hard to like be like this is like the Steffenfeld game you should be playing in 2022.
Okay, let me ask it this way. We're not talking about the regular board, the regular game scale. We're talking about the Feld game scale, which is a special Jake scale.
Yeah,
Is this a Feld 6 out of 10 or a Feld 7 out of 10 or a Feld 8 out of 10? Because I know it's not higher than 8 out of 10.
I don't know how to answer that question. Like I don't know what that means, but I think this is probably like below Castles of Burgundy, Bruges, Carpe Diem, and it might be right there, like four
Yeah,
or
okay.
5.
Yeah.
Probably like it better than like Macau or Notre Dame that I've played recently. So I think it's definitely upper echelon in the Feld catalog, and I think like what it does a little bit different is it gives players, like when you think about like agency, it gives players a lot more control over the tempo and the pace of the game. Where in Castles of Burgundy, like the tempo of the game is so dictated to you by like the rounds. You if you complete your a region in the first round, it's worth 10 points. In the second round, 4 points. Like the game is constantly like doling out these tempo gates. Where in uh, Bonfire, there's nothing really like that. Like you could be
Mm.
going for like big uh, objectives at the beginning of the game that are worth a lot of points, and like trying to pick your spots, like when you need to like stop and just like pick up an end game scoring card. And also like how fast you want to like trigger the end game. It's like much more yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just like a much more organic experience to play the game. So it's like kind of like playing Castles of Burgundy, but like with players having a lot more freedom to kind of play around in the sandbox. So that's going to really appeal to some people. I think I kind of like, and I think you sometimes also fall in this category of like liking having a little bit more restraints and like finding the way to like work within that to achieve things. So yeah, this kind of goes on the towards the other end.
Sounds like for Feld fans who want more Feld.
Yeah,
Also, what you just
definitely.
unlocked the secret of Feld, right? That Feld games are secretly lighter than you think they are based on the expectations the rules set. Like Castles of Burgundy is totally that too. It's a very light
Totally.
game.
And this game too has like it's super easy to explain, surprisingly. Like the theme is harder to explain
That is surprising.
than the rules because like when you actually sit down there's like just like Castles of Burgundy, it's like
It
on your
clicks.
turn these are like the 6 actions that you could possibly do and each one of them on its own is like very easy to understand. And that's the
Awesome.
game. And we're going to keep doing one of, these actions until the end game is triggered and we're going to count up our points.
Amazing. Okay, we're 22 minutes in and we have two games down. So I feel like at some point you got to give like a one-liner about a game, but you should pick when it is because I have no idea. But I'll
Okay.
say this next game you played twice, so I'm really intrigued. It's Tenpenny Park and it's a 2022 release from
Yes.
Nate Linhart.
This game was also a big surprise for me. So I did play it twice. I guess first, a really brief overview. Tenpenny Park is a polyomino style game where you're trying to build out a theme park. So on your turn, you're basically able to take these polyomino tiles that represent rides or a single 1 by 1 square tiles that are like concession stands, and you're trying to put them on your board, and they're going to give you points by helping you to go up one of 3 tracks or multiple of 3 tracks sometimes that are worth points at the end of the game if you get to the end. There are also like hidden objectives that's like, I want to get 2 of the space themed rides into my park before the end of the game, or I want to end the game the highest up on this track, like that type of thing. So it's that very, very light polyomino game. And overlaid on top of that is like an incredibly light worker placement mechanic. So you have 3 workers, you're placing them onto spots that either allow you to buy tiles or you're placing them on spots that like allow you to like clear trees off your board to make more room for tiles to go down, or you can get some extensions to your board or pick up a concession stand. It's like just like a few spaces. That's it. Each round you get 3 actions and there's like 5 rounds of the game. So it's like a 15 action game. Super breezy. And like the thing I would say about this game is it's just like it's an incredibly like fun forward game. I think everything about it is really the design I think has like been really intentional about like distilling it down to this very core idea and like making sure that everything you're doing in this game pretty much is fun uh, and rewarding.
So you have a player board like Patchwork, and
Yeah.
there's little trees on it. What do the little trees do? Do you have to pay to take them off? These are for listeners. These are 3D wood component trees, and then your
Tree
polyominoes
pulls.
are flat. They're tree pulls.
Yeah. So that you can't. So the placement rules are pretty interesting in this game. So unlike most polyomino games where you're trying to like tightly pack them into a square, like we've been playing a lot of Barren Park, which we're going to be covering
Mm.
on the podcast soon. You're trying to you know make your tiles all flush against each other. In Tenpenny Park, you have to have like you can't share edges at all. You can have things sharing a corner, uh, but not sharing a side. So you have to have like 1 square of space between everything, and you can't place a tile on top of a tree. So there's like an action. I think it's free and it just allows you to remove 2 trees, but that's kind of like the action that doesn't actually help you win the game. Like everything else helps you win. So that's just kind of like I've messed up so now I have to like take a turn to clear some trees so that like I can hopefully place something else. But the game does such a good job of like you place your first tile and then you look at your board and you're like, oh great, now I can't like cover up this bonus space because I placed it right next to it. And there has to be space between everything. That's exactly what I did in my very first game. Of like, I put something down. I was like, okay, yes, this is the perfect tile. It's like meets my objective. Blah blah. I've got it. Put it on my board, and I look at my board. I'm like, oh well, I'm never going to be able to get that bonus space by covering that up because of how I've done this. which so like immediately I wanted to play it again. But
Super cool.
the thing I would say, like the first group I played it with, I was the only person that liked it. Like I thought it was awesome. I was having a great time. Everybody else just felt like it was like too light. Um, so it's a
Interesting.
very, very light experience, like almost a kid's game, I would say, in kind of a weight class. But but that being said, like my mistakes, I mean, that first game were like really obvious. You know, and somebody was saying like, I don't think there are really decisions in this game, and I'm like looking down at my like messed up board, like I'm pretty sure there are, like at least for me, you know. And it really made me want to try it again. And so like on the very last day, or my last day of the con, we were like looking for something light, and I pulled it out with Dave and Conrad, this other guy I was playing with like all day, and everyone just like loved it the second time, you know, with that particular group. So I think this game has a ton of merit. I think it like, you know, we've been playing a lot of Barren Park. I'm not sure which game I'd rather play, which
Good
is,
sign.
and I like Barren Park.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, you know, I think for a multiplayer light polyomino game, that's a very competitive space in the marketplace. And I think Tenpenny Park has a lot of merit uh, and is worthy of consideration for kind of like a gateway game, a game in that kind of genre. Um, yeah, the only thing I didn't love about it was the secret objectives, just because I felt like they kind of
Yeah. Whatever.
railroaded you
Yeah.
into the
Strategy.
strategy. But that's helpful for like new gamers too, right? It gives you
Sure.
like a really good sense of direction. So that's it for that one.
Can I really quickly say
Yeah.
it? You really made me want to try this. It also has art by Vincent Dutray, which is always a plus for me. You might
It
know him.
looks awesome.
Yeah, gorgeous, gorgeous art. And it's published by Thunderworks Games, who did Cartographers, which I think is really interesting because that's another example of basically a polyomino game where you want to shove stuff all up in each other's face. But in that game, you also do have some blocking. Obviously, it's a publisher, different designer. But I'm just really intrigued by that idea of a polyomino game where you're not trying to jam the polyominoes together, where you're trying to fit them around other objects. It's really
Yeah,
fun
and the
twist.
game looks so good. Like the art on each card, it looks great. The art on the tiles looks awesome. It's so evocative of the theme. And then on the back of each card that you purchase, that allows you to pick up the tile, it shows like an old school like circus style like print of like what that ride would have been advertised at. That just looks
Wow.
amazing. And like this next game we'll talk about, we played right before Tenpenny Park. And while we were playing this, I just kept like looking at like the Tenpenny Park box. Like, I'm kind of like, it's like that one looks fun. Like I'm just like so eager to like dive into something that's like trying to be like fun for the sake of fun, because that's not what this next game really is doing at all.
So, what did you think of Furnace, the 2020 release from Ivan Lashin, who's also the designer of Smartphone Inc., which I didn't know?
I felt like my one sentence review of Furnace was like, I think it's a game, like an amazing game, an amazing design that's like more clever than it is fun to play. And I think part of that might be like just this like super drab industrial theme. Like all it's like it has this like very stark white look.
Yeah.
It's very like Google homepage, uh, you know, which is, you know, that's like good design, right? So that's like the background of every card, and then on top of that, you have this like industrial building coughing up like smog. And it's like well done art. Like the art, it honestly like is very like evocative, you know, and it looks great. And like if I saw it like in a museum, I'd be like, wow, that's like a really cool painting of like a factory. But you know, it didn't like jump out at me of like scream like fun, you know. So the game mechanism is really cool though. It's an auction game where you get four money chips, your bidding chips, a four, a three, a two, and a one. It's very simple to explain. Basically, you lay out, you know, X number of cards depending on how many people are in the game, and then you go around the circle and you get to put one uh, auction chip on a card. And there are a couple rules, like you can never put uh, a chip on a card that you already have a chip on. So if you put a 3 down on a card, somebody else puts a 4, you can't go and put a 2 on it the next time to like surpass them. And you also can't put a number on a card that already has the same number on it. And basically, if you win the bid, you get that card. If you lose the bid, you get to like get some consolation prize, which is like at the top of the card. It might be like get 2 coal, and you get to get that times whatever number you put on that card for the losing bid. So it's that in and of itself creates like a really interesting decision space of trying to decide, what cards am I trying to win? What actually like you're going to not only like winning every card isn't good necessarily because you need some of the concession prizes to like run your engine, which is what happens in each of the 4 rounds after the auction. You basically run your engine, so it'd be like, oh, use this coal to upgrade this card, then that card gives me 2 more coal. You do whatever you can, and at the end of the game, you're just trying to convert it all into money or points. So I don't know. I mean, it was a fun game. The thing I liked most about it was that everybody got very interesting, unique player powers, kind of like Marco Polo, in the sense that they all are just like crazy busted and yet like worked surprisingly well. So like my power was whenever I got a consolation prize, I got to act as though my chip had a 1 higher value than it was. Another person got to break the placement rule of both placement rules, so they could put the same number on a card. And I can't remember what the other person got an extra 2 chip. So they get to bid a whole extra time in a round. So that was like really cool, and I was really impressed with the design and how well all those player power, like everybody got to feel like I'm super powerful in this way that nobody else is, which is really fun. And everything worked great, but like I just kind of felt like at the end of the game I wasn't totally satisfied in my experience. Like I made this engine, like I produced a ton of coal and steel, and I converted a lot of it to points, and but there was nothing that was like, okay, I want to like keep going back to this.
Would you play it again if offered?
I mean, I think like I honestly think for me, I'd probably rather play something else.
Sure.
If it was like at a game night and 3 people are like, yeah, we're just about to like start Furnace, like grab a seat, I wouldn't be like, no, I refuse. I'd rather go home.
Yeah.
But I'd be like,
for sure.
like anything else,
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Okay, one more question. Why'd they put a young Abraham Lincoln on the cover?
Yeah, I don't know. I can't answer that.
I've wanted to say that on the show for so long. Okay.
So I think a lot of people will love this game, but I think honestly that's more like it's just not my thing.
Cup of tea. Yeah. What about Four Gardens, 2020 release, designer Martin Dolezal? This is not your cup of tea?
This one was really not my cup of tea. And like, I don't want to be too mean. I don't like get any fun out of like panning a game, but I think like this game just really didn't work for a few different reasons. Basically, in Four Gardens, you are kind of like a decision space favorite game, Kanagawa. You have these cards with beautiful art, and you're trying to create a panorama painting. So there's like 4 different sets you can complete in the game. So there's like a 2-card panorama, a 3-card panorama, a 4-card panorama, and a 5-card panorama. And you're trying to so you basically need to draft all the cards that you need for the panorama you're trying to build. So like if you're going for the 5-card panorama, there's like a specific card that represents like the 5th card in that panorama. And once you have that, you can't play another 5th card of the same panorama. So you have to find all the other ones. But the main core mechanism of this game is there's a giant 4-story pagoda thing built in front of you. And on all your cards, so on your turn, what you'll do is first you'll play a card that allows you to rotate one of the 4 tiers of the pagoda. And on each of the pagoda sides, so it has 4 roofs.
Yep.
Right? And on each of the roofs, there's different symbols of resources that you'll need to collect. And it's the bottom one is grass, and then it's rock, and then it's water, and then it's air. I don't know. I can't remember what it is. But there's 4 different resources you can get. So you'll rotate it, and then the card will indicate whether you collect from the bottom up or the top down, and you can only ever hold 4 resources at a time. So get this, like if it says 3 rocks at the bottom, and or if there's like 3 grass at the bottom and then a rock at and you're collecting up, you'll grab the 3 grass and then 1 rock, and then you're done. You're not collecting anything else. So a lot of what this game comes down to is like just like trying to puzzle out on your turn, like what is the most efficient way to rotate one of the roofs of the pagoda and then collect resources in a way that like gets you some of what you need to like construct projects that you're like then working on. And a lot of times like you have like a hand of 5 cards, so a lot of times you'll like be like, okay, well, if this thing was like rotated in a different way, I'd be able to get what I want, but it's not. So I have to like figure out like the best case scenario. And like I need a card that rotates the third one and collects from the bottom up, but I don't have that. So that's like a super specific thing to need. I could rotate the top one, I could rotate the bottom one and collect from the top to the bottom. And everything is like frustrated by the fact that like you have this giant 3D object that you can't see all the sides. You can only see the side facing you.
You're crooning your neck a bunch, I bet. Are you like...
You're always looking, because like each thing will be like, okay, it'll be 3, 2, 1, 0 on all the roofs. So it's like theoretically you could just like know that. But that's like a lot of information to keep in your head when they're all turned different angles, right? Yep. And so like it just created like some of the worst AP ever for like what is like otherwise a super light game. And I kept thinking like, man, this game just gives you like we talk a lot about like sometimes decision spaces can be really interesting because they give you blunt tools to do a precise task. And I was just thinking like, man, this game gives you like the most blunt tools ever too blunt to do this thing. And the other huge problem with it I found was like, so on your turn, you do that action, you also play a card and you also draft a card. And I just kept thinking like, and each of those things take some brain power. Like it's really asking you to do a lot on your turn. And I was just like thinking like, why in the world is this not like a 1 action game? Like everybody's took a single action. It would go around the table and keep you engaged. But like, I'm telling you, everybody was on their phone in this game. Like, because somebody's just like looking at the pagoda forever, like rotating around. And it's just like not deep enough, like on your turn to stay engaged with it. So it was a huge miss for me. It looks absolutely beautiful. Like it has a great table presence. Like the panel, whoever the artist is for this game that did the art on the cards did an amazing job. Like the cards look beautiful, but yeah, it was for me, unfortunately, not a game that I have any interest in going back to.
It's definitely hurt by the fact that it evokes Kanagawa, which we both love. Okay.
I was telling everyone the game. I was like, you guys got to try Kanagawa.
Yeah, seriously. It's this aesthetic, but way better.
Yeah, right.
Okay, the next one I'm really intrigued by. A co-design from Reiner Knizia, released in 2021. So it's designed by Martino Chiara and Reiner Knizia, and it's Witchstone. What do you think of Witchstone, Jake? People call this the Feld of Knizios.
So it really feels like a Feld game, almost more so than a Knizia game, I would say. But basically in this game, you have tiles, and you're putting them into a personal player board that I think represents like a cauldron. And each tile is like 2-sided, like it takes up like 2 hexes on your board, like 2 conjoined hexes. And then it has 2 actions on it. So you'll get to do both actions when you play it. And there's kind of like a couple of different like mini games, like very, very Feldian. Like you're trying to like get these crystals out of your cauldron. So one of the actions is like moving the crystals. Another action is like connecting like a network of witches on this crystal ball that takes up the majority of the main board, which looks amazing. Like, this is like probably the best looking game of the weekend. Like it looks so sick on the table. And which is cool for a Knizia game.
Definitely.
And the key mechanism is that as you're placing these, if you place a tile in a way that action connects with another action of the same type, you get to do that action times however many it's touching. So if I place, the crystal action in a space where it's connected to like a grouping of 4 other crystals. That means like I get to do the crystal action 5 times. So the game really is, I think like the game is really tile laying game where you're trying to do the best you can to basically get the most actions of anyone in the game. Um, and I found that really fun. So you always have like 5 in front of you, and then after you go, you get to draw another one. So you can really do a good job of planning ahead. So when it was my turn, I was always ready to like, okay, this is what I'm doing right now. I think this game could be really AP inducing if you're not pre-planning. Like this is definitely a game for pre-planners. Like I only want to play this with pre-planners for that reason. But with that, I mean, it was really fun. Like again, it's kind of another game where everything you're doing feels really fun and satisfying. Um, and yeah, the only like kind of caveat I had, like I really enjoyed my play. It was a great play of the weekend, but I'm thinking like, how much do I want to like keep playing this? And it kind of felt like one of those games where in my first play, I sort of explored
Mm,
everything and
mm.
a lot of like what you're doing to the extent that there could be like different strategies to explore. Like the guy who won the game, and he was moving crystals off of like his home cauldron first, and it kind of is this mechanism where you start with a bunch of crystals in your cauldron, and you could place on top of a crystal and destroy it, but that's like -1 victory point. So he was moving all these, like he had a bunch of crystal actions like in his opening hand, so he could like move them all out, and that just seemed like a really efficient thing to do at the start of the game. But if you don't have those in your hand, like you can't, you can't take a crystal action unless you have those things. So it kind of made me think like it's just the type of game like I don't think going back to it, you can't really be like, okay, I'm going to try something different. You just have to sort of play the hand you're dealt in a way, and you're always going to be doing everything in the game, right? Because you always play all of your tiles by the end of the game.
Yep.
So I'm just like not sure how much intrigue there is in like playing this over and over again. Like, will it feel the same every time? Will it feel different? I think there's a lot of skill in like now in tile placement. So it's not saying there's not a lot of skill. I just don't know that you'll get like a lot of variety in the experience of play.
A lot of games like this too, Jake, take like, okay, you're going to play it 10 times and it feels really samey, those 10 plays, and then you're 15 plays in and it's like that you've unlocked the matrix and you see how it's totally different, but then trying to sell that to someone who's only played it twice, they're like, I've played this game before.
Yeah,
And that can be
yeah.
really tough. Yeah.
So totally, like in this game, like I would love to play it again. I had an awesome time with it. I think it's a great game, but it wasn't. I wasn't like, oh, like when I went back to the Play and Win library, I wasn't like, let's grab Witchstone and play that again,
Yeah.
like I was some of these other games.
Sure. Okay. Are you, well, okay. Yeah. Are you becoming a Knizia fan?
I am, dude. I
Yes.
can't even lie
Yes.
because I'm having such a good time playing Lost Cities right now.
Amazing.
It's such a good game.
Which TBD, that's a little surprise secret for the future. But we got to move on.
Yeah,
Okay. This one I asked you about over the weekend because I saw that you played it and I was like, this is not a Jake game. This is the oldest game Jake played. And it's a game by Sid Saxon, legendary American board game designer and like collector and just game lover. And it's I'm the Boss. I say this isn't a Jake game because there's like lots of BS. It's like a negotiation game. It's not a
yeah.
Jake game.
A favorite of our friends over on the Board Game Barrage podcast, we should say. I have a feeling they are the reason this game got brought out. I kind of met up with a different friend, a new friend, and he was kind enough to invite me into his gaming group. So I played a couple of games with him in the morning, and then we were kind of ready for the next thing. And somebody showed up. It's like, look what I found in the library. Like, we have to play this. It's a classic. And I was like, oh, I don't know. Like, I was like literally trying to like weasel out of it because I just had no interest. And they're like, no, it's fine. It's quick. It's like a 3-page rule. So I sat down and played it with them.
It was an
I'm the
hour.
bot. It was an hour. It wasn't too
Yeah.
long or anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I sat down and played with them. And So I'm the Boss is a negotiation game where basically there's like a roll and move mechanic where
Hell yeah.
you roll
Hell
the
yeah.
die. Yeah, you roll the die, and there's like this giant wooden dollar symbol, and it goes onto one of these spaces, and that's like a deal. And if it's on your turn, and the deal will tell you like basically like what people in the game need to be involved in this deal in order for it to go through. I don't want to explain all the rules of this game, but basically, when it's on your turn, you get to decide like, do I want to like try and accomplish this deal, or do I want to like pass and draw cards, which I already don't like as a mechanic because it's like I never wanted to draw cards. Like
Yeah.
that's just like not fun. I wanted to like do the deal.
And the game is you have agency over how much of the deal, the points in the game people get, more or less, right?
Yeah, yeah. So all the deals have like one more share than people needed in it. So it's like, okay, you need 3 people in this, so there's 4 shares. And pretty much the meta of our game very quickly evolved in like the boss gets 1 extra share. Everybody
Sure.
else gets 1, and everybody's just like fighting to be one of the people that gets the 1 cuz like getting a share of money, which is victory points on a round that's not your turn to like where you're basically guaranteed to be in it, is huge, you know? So like it felt like the incentive structure was really, really clear. Um,
And I'm the boss cards that let you become the boss on someone else's turn, right?
yeah, yes, there are, which are totally random. And one guy got like 3 of them. I got 0 of them, and so that kind of sucked, But yeah, so like there are really awesome player power, kind of not player power, but these cards that really allow you to kind of interrupt things. I think like I think this game is a game that's just as fun as the people you're playing it with. A lot of people kind of like sometimes I don't think it's like a criticism, but they'll say things of like shut up and sit down. We're like, well, of course they like these like silly party games because they're like these really clever comedians and like all their friends are like super awesome and funny. But for us like slobs, like we're not getting that same kind of experience because we're not like semi-pro comedian or whatever. And I kind of wonder if that might be what's happening a little bit of this the game when like the crew of like Board Game Barrage is playing it, because like I don't know, my problem with these games, like as always, is like when you think about the agency of this game, it's like how do I get to be in these deals? And like to me, it just feels and sounds like whining every time.
Mm.
It's just like because everybody has the same agency, the same goal, same desire. Like there's no like
Can you
real
make
logical argument you can make.
can you
It's
make
just like
future? Can you make future
sure,
promises?
you could say like, oh, when I'm the boss, like I'll cut you in on my deal.
We gotta play this game together. I want to try it.
But in general, it's like, oh, don't put Brian in there because he already goes in on the last deal. And like I swear, like the first deal of the game, it might have been the second one. I don't know. When I wasn't, I don't think I was the boss when this happened, but like so that's like the second deal of the game. The game's just started. And the guy is like, okay, you and you can come on the deal. And the person who taught the game is like, oh yeah, like because I taught the game. Of course, nobody's gonna like put me in on any deals. I'm just like, oh my God. Like, is this the kind of like experience people and I know it's like everyone I was playing with was like totally nice and like lighthearted, but like that kind of like wheeling and dealing, like I can't get out of my head that that's just like, okay, we're just like whining at each other for an hour because there's no like rational like argument you can make, and the winner of this game is going to be the person who like whines the most or draws the best cards. Like I don't know, man, it's not for me. I'm not the right person to judge it, as you correctly point out, but it wasn't a lot of fun for me. The thing I liked best about it, the same race, was I felt like it was going to drag on and on, because you're doing the exact same thing every single round. So there's not like a lot of intrigue there, but the design does a very good job of the share value ramps up each round. So it gets more and more important getting in deals as the game goes on. And it has like a variable ending condition where like, the game could be a max of 15 rounds. But at the 10th round, you start rolling the dice. And after the 10th round, if you roll like a 6, the game's over right then. And then it's like if you roll a 5 or a 6 after the 11th deal. So it's like becoming more and more likely. So that added some like genuine fun and excitement to the game.
Sounds like a ton of really cool ideas that maybe with modern design tools, Sid could have brought even better to life.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's do it.
Okay. Cafe. This is a 2 times play game, 2020, and this game is designed by the credit on Board Game Geek as Costa and Rola, 2 different designers.
I think they're Portuguese. Yeah. Anyway, this game was a big surprise to me. I just grabbed it at a whim from the Play and Win room, and what this is like a very interesting card game. So it's just a deck of cards. Each card is a 6 square grid, and they show different actions on it. So on your each round of the game, you'll be drafting one card and adding it to a tableau. Um, and that decision of how to add it to a tableau, it was like one of the most challenging and like brutal decisions of any game I played all weekend. So like I was already just really impressed with this game from the get go, because what you have to do is like cover up 2, 3, or 4 squares. So you're every time you're getting a new card, you're taking away actions and opportunity, because in each square is a different action. And basically what you're trying to do in this game is like you need cards that have coffee bean because they produce coffee. And then you need cards that have like a drying mat on them because that allows you to dry the beans. And then you have a coffee grinder that allows you to like grind it. And then finally you have coffee shops where you can like distribute to. So in this game, you're taking actions and you're trying to go through this whole supply chain to like create different varieties of coffee and ultimately sell to these shops, which is super cool to have all of that in just a card game. And what was really fun about it is it's like just a 20-minute game flat. It's like 8 rounds, you draft 8 cards, play them down, take a few actions each time, and then you're done. And I think like what this game accomplishes with such a simple set of components is really impressive. I think there are some like pretty significant flaws with it, in that like if you need a drying mat and there's none available to you, you're kind of stuck for that turn. So there's a ton of randomness just in like how the cards come out. And also I think like the cards are not equal at all. So some of the cards have like 2 blank squares for some reason, where some of the cards have like all 6 have profitable actions. So I'm not sure if the designer thought like, oh, these blank squares are good because it makes it easy to place a card on it next round and not cover anything up. But like clearly that's just a downside over something else. So there are definitely moments in this game where it's like somebody has to like take a not good card and then it flips over like an amazing card that just has all the actions. And you're like, well, I'll take that one. But super easy to overlook that, the randomness in this game for what is a really interesting design. It's honestly one that I would love to pick up and show people because it's like that clever and good and fast playing.
And Cafe is also a beautiful game on the table. It's just it looks different. It's I mean, it is beautiful. It's also, it stands out as just being different than most games sitting on the table than I've seen, which gets bonus points for me. A game that aesthetically looks different on the table. Really cool looking game.
Totally. Yeah, it was fun. That's why I checked it out twice. Because I just like had to show Paul
nice.
Solomon. Yeah, I was like, you got to see this.
He liked it, right? That's like a total Paul game, I bet.
Yeah, he was impressed by it. I think he noticed some of the same like kind of criticisms I pointed out to you. But we had a great time playing it.
Okay, next game, Martin Wallace, 2020, Anno 1800. What do you think, Jake?
This was another one I like really wanted to get to the table because I'd heard a lot about it. So Anno 1800 is like a big Martin Wallace game, and this is just like a resource conversion type of game to the max. Like there's like the main board is basically just 100 different technologies that you can buy and build on your board that allow you to like buy and build other technologies. There's also this really funny thing where like it's a variable end condition where you start with like 7 goal cards, and when you accomplish all your last card, you that triggers the end game. But the funny thing about that is like tons of things you do in the game just like add more cards to your hand, including some of the goal cards.
That's a cool mechanic.
So it's like every time you like add a new worker, you have to like draw a goal of like that worker type, basically, which creates this like moment where it's like we've been playing this game for like an hour and a half.
I see. Yeah.
And I'm like, guys, I'm back down to 7 cards, and everybody's like, but so I honestly think like this game has a reputation of being like really long playing, and I think it's because of that. Like you feel like
it feels really long. Yeah,
it feels like you're not getting anywhere. You're just like treading water, and because that's what you're doing for like the bulk of the game. But then the ending snuck up on us like really fast. Like maybe 15 minutes later, I was out of cards because I played a few like 2 different cards that let me discard 2 other cards in my hand.
Yeah,
like some of the it basically the game forces you to get to like the most expensive uh, types of resources and most expensive types of technology so that you can like accomplish the most powerful goal cards, and those give you like really powerful benefits to complete them, like play again or discard 2 cards out of your hand. So like once those things come online, which it probably takes about like an hour and a half to do so, then like the game ending is imminent, even if it seems like everybody still has a handful of gold cards.
If this game was async available, you would grind the heck out of it.
I think so. Yeah, it's a game I really thought was interesting. I'm not sure if it's one I'm going to want to buy just because uh,
When would you get
again,
it to
it's
the
like
table?
it might be a game that was kind of like it didn't have like the fun of it didn't like super
Mm,
jump out at me. Like I
yeah.
was fascinated by it. I was like enthralled by the play, but it was kind of like it actually like the mechanics are so light when it gets
Mm,
down to it. Like there's a lot of different things on the board, but all you're doing on your turn is like getting a few resources and picking up one. So kind of like what you're doing on the first turn and what you're doing on the last turn, very similar.
yeah.
Um, but there is a fascinating game there, which I think, and I actually won this game, one of the few games I won this weekend, which made me like it a little more. But like, I think what the game actually is. So I'll tell you, like, the best mechanic in this game is like there's these trade tokens you can get, and this is like negotiation that I like. You can give somebody a trade token, and if they do, or you expend a trade token, you can use any of the technologies they've built, and they get 1 gold for it, and they can't refuse it.
It's not negotiation.
Well, there's a little bit of negotiation because it's like if two
Oh, you're
people.
like, use mine, use mine.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
But I just love that. It's like negotiation that like you can't refuse. Like
Yeah.
that's my style of negotiation. So I think like what this game actually is, like the game is like is like being the person who's best at like zooming out, looking at like what's happening on everybody's board to identify the technology that is like needed at that moment the most, or like, and when it's good to do that versus like when it's good to like get the technology that you need so that you won't have to like use other
Heck yeah.
people's stuff. And
That
that
sounds
is
like a cool game.
fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah. That sounds like I'm in. That's learn
Yeah.
the rules to Tinner's Trail so we can play it. Okay.
Okay.
Tavern Tales Legends of Dungeon Drop
Okay.
2021 Gregory Skolnick.
This could be a good
This
one.
the okay.
A good like 30-second one. So don't try this one with 2 players because that's what I did. And it didn't really work at all. It's basically super light bar game. I think like kind of like Skull or something.
You're flicking stuff.
No, you're not
No.
flicking stuff.
Okay.
It's kind of like almost like a trick taking game where basically you'll be like, I'm gonna go. So there's like 5 different locations, and everybody has a hand of cards that have like 1 or 2 different locations that you could send that person to, and somebody will essentially start a trick and be like, I'm going to the ice caves, and they play an ice caves card, and it goes around the table, and if somebody's like, no, I'm going to the ice cave. Uh, then it go around again, and anybody gets a chance to like take it from them, and the person who's like the last person to play one and it goes around, nobody else puts any more ice caves, gets the treasure, and you're playing to get like a certain amount of points. But it's super light but incredibly punishing because the cards that like don't win are just out, like discarded. So I think it would be a fun game to play with more people. I'd love to try it like over drinks with a group of
More
like 3 to 5,
people.
but at 2 it was like, this is not working.
Okay, what about Riverside 2021 roll and write game from Eilif Svensson,
This
designer
was
of Trails of Tucana?
Yeah, I'll give a quick one too. This was a really fun little roll and write game. I had a great time playing it. Uh, I think there's some very clever mechanisms in it, but to me, it kind of falls into like the category of roll and write that I'm just not that interested in ultimately. Where it's like a roll and write game for gamers, like it's too
Mm.
complicated to teach to non gamers, and like, but and complicated enough for gamers that I would almost always rather play like something that's not a really clever roll and write if I have like a group of gamers to play with.
Am I right too, Jake, that there's a lot of randomness in this game based around, it's not like a flip and right. You're literally like, there's a track and you like roll a die and you could do any action between 1 and 3 actions that are coming up. So you kind of have to like guess around what action is going to come out.
Yeah, kind of. I think like there's enough. I didn't find that I had like any trouble at all, like doing profitable things on every
Okay.
turn. I think like the game promised that there would be like some like element of like risk mitigation. Like I have to make sure. So basically, you're like crossing off different types of passengers on a cruise ship to get like tickets, and then you could take that type of power passenger to like different attractions that appear. So I thought like going into it, like maybe there'll be some like challenge of predicting like when a yellow attraction is coming up, so like I could know when to get the yellow people ready. But I just didn't find that really
Mm,
mattered. Like I was
okay.
always able to like use a yellow attraction like when I needed it. um but there was some clever stuff. The mechanic I liked best was you'd roll the dice and you'd find the median dice and you'd take that
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the other two below it. And so, like the low value dice you could use for free to get passengers, and then the three more expensive dice you could use those too, but it cost like fuel, and you had like a limited supply of fuel. You had like I think 14 fuel the whole game,
Interesting.
so you could take a 6 die to get 6 passengers in one color, which is huge. But that's like almost half of your fuel for the whole game. And once you're out of fuel, you can't take any of those up there. So you could really put yourself in a bad spot.
I
Um,
think this is an
so it was
Eyeless
clever.
Svensson roll and write trick trait, I think, where it's like you have really high agency plays, but you only have a few of them. So like lots of skill testing, skill shots.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what about this next one, Jake? 2021, Crater's impact on the board game community, and one that I know you've been looking forward to playing for a long time. It's the Crew Mission Deep Sea 2021, Thomas C.
Yeah. So we only played a few rounds of this. I was pretty excited to. I played the original Crew, so I was excited to
Mm.
see what Crew Mission Deep Sea brought. And I know a lot of people have been saying this is just like a strict upgrade to the system in the Crew, the original one, which won like best game of the year or whatever. So that's pretty impressive. And I have to say, it definitely is just a strict upgrade to the system.
Nice.
Yeah. Basically, the innovation that this brings in is in the original Crew, there are like 50 missions in the book, and they're always going to be the same. They're pre designed, pre described missions. In this, you still have that, which will like give you the setup, but then you have a deck of cards, and it will basically tell you the difficulty, and you'll shuffle this deck of cards, which is like all kinds of different tasks. So it might be like a task is like you have to win. The player who takes this task can only win a single pink card, or like you have to win all the yellow cards, or you have to win a trick that has only even numbers in it, or so on and so forth. And it'll basically tell you the difficulty. And then on the back of the cards, it'll tell you like how difficult that was. So you'll keep flipping over tasks until it adds up to the prescribed challenge in the book, on top of like whatever the other part of the challenge is that's written in the book. So every time you played mission 2 in this game is going to be different, whereas every time you play mission 2 in the original Crew, it's going to be exactly the same challenge. So I just thought that was like a fantastic innovation. If you don't know about the Crew, it's a trick taking game. If you don't know what a trick taking game is, look it up. I'm not going to explain it to you here because we don't have time. But basically, it's a trick taking game with the innovation that it's a cooperative game with limited communication. So you're trying to accomplish these shared goals without speaking to each other. All you can do to communicate is, and sometimes not even this much, depending on the challenge, is you have a communication token. So at any point during the play of the game, you can reveal one card in your hand and say whether it's the only card of that suit that you have by placing your communication token in the middle, whether it's the highest card of that suit and you have, revealing that you have other lower cards as well, or whether it's the lowest card in the suit that you have. And you have to work within that confines to come up with a situation where, you know, Dave is winning only a single pink card. I'm winning all of any one suit, but not pink, obviously. And Conrad is winning a trick that contains all odd cards and doing all of that, without communicating besides this very limited way is a fantastic amount of it's just like just the tension is really great when you're getting down to the end and like we're almost there. Are we all on the same page? And I haven't played this game enough to like really fully grasp it. Like I felt like Dave and Conrad I was playing with like got it more than me.
Mm,
So sometimes I was kind of like a little bit lost towards the end. Where I'm just like playing cards. Like I hope I'm like not like missing something like super obvious here. But the moments where you successfully do it and you've won the game is
feel awesome.
it just feels awesome. Like it feels like you get like all the excitement of winning like a much longer, more
Mm,
involved cooperative game. And it feels truly cooperative, right? There's no quarterbacking issue.
yeah.
I mean, the game is just fantastic.
I'll also say this is the secret trick, right? We were talking about games with blunt tools. The communication tool is a tool that looks blunt, that can be really sharp and make you feel like a genius. And that's like the secret apex of games, talking about agencies and like tools that you give your players. That's when it's the best. You're like, here's this rock. And they're like, this isn't a rock. It's a scalpel. Like I can say all this information with this one little thing, which that's amazing. That feels
Yeah.
great.
And I
We
think
should,
the
yeah.
I think it could be definitely a good episode topic in the future. But like the other thing that's so interesting about this one is like you get to have such different experiences. Like in some of the games, like I would be the leader and I'd be like leading the trick almost the whole time. And the agency, when you're in that like driver's seat, you're basically like determining
Mm,
like how this is all going to play out. And then there's this like amazing moment where you're like, I'm not really confident that I know where to proceed from here. So I'm just gonna like play this one, and now somebody else is gonna have to like kind of like take over and be like, you like the person who's leading the trick really feels like the leader in this game, and that kind of like swapping agencies of like being like I'm in charge, I'm the leader of this crew to be like I'm just like here to like help out and like get along, and how that like can naturally flip on a dime. It's like I don't know that there's anything like it in any other game I've played.
so awesome. Decision Space Classic. I'm tearing the shrink on the crew mission deep stage.
Oh,
I'm not even joking. This is a copy. I have Jake can testify.
it's
Wait, I gotta
true.
get it in here. So you've heard it once on an episode. You're hearing it again. We're gonna cover it at some point. Okay,
Okay,
two more
I
games,
better get a
Jake.
copy. Yeah, I
You
think
gotta
we can
power
make it.
through. We can do it.
Yes, we can do it. So the next one, Railroad Inc., another roll and write game, and honestly, kind of another pass for me. I think like this one, I had both this and Riverside. Like I had totally fun experiences playing with, but I think they both kind of fall into the same category where it's just like a bit too much going
Mm.
on, uh, to the point where it's like I don't know. It's
What
just a
version did you
personal
play?
preference. I played the green box with
Okay.
trees. So I
Okay.
guess there's like a bunch of different boxes, and in each box there's like a different two
One extra
different
mechanic.
modules you can
Yeah.
use. Yeah, at the beginning of the game, he's like, "Do you want to use like trees or something else?" And I was like, "Trees."
Trees. Sure.
But basically, in this game, you roll like 6 dice, and on each of the dice, there's like a crazy variety of die faces that could come up that show some combination of uh,
Roads and
railroad
rails.
tracks and roads. It could be like it could be like two rails crossing in the middle, or two rails, or like a single rail, or like a corner, or like an end of the rail, or both things, or just trees. And so on a round of the game, you roll those dice and like you use all of them on your board. So it's just like such a heads down experience, right? I mean,
Yep.
absolutely zero interaction at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're both playing a solo game, which is fine, but it just seemed like I don't know. To me, it was just too much to like think about and process in any given turn. Like you have to like write down like the number each time, and I had to keep looking back and be like, wait, did I use which of these things did I use? And you can't really grab them. And like if I was playing a solo version of the game, which I'm not really a solo game player typically, but I think I would like this more solo because then I could like write down a die and move it over here. But because I was playing with other people, I couldn't do that. So I'm just like having to like look and like remember what's
Yeah.
these things. It's just a lot to track in my brain at one time. And I actually won this game too. So that really lets you know that it's not for me if I won it and still kind of
Mine, I used to play railroading over coffee, but we would just play the base game, no added expansion module, and I think that was enough. I enjoyed it. But
Yeah.
speaking of lakes,
Yes.
how was Boonlake?
Okay. This game was
Alexander
yeah.
Pfister.
Alexander Pfister, designer of Great Western Trail and even greater broom service.
Yep. The Great Broom Service.
the greatest broom service, put out another little ditty called Boonlake. And, I was really interested to try this because, Pfister is a designer that I've been really hot and cold on. Like Broom Service is a top 5 game for me all time. Like I love it. Uh, Great Western Trail I think is fine, but obviously I'm a lot lower on it than most of our listeners, and most of the board game public. He also did a game called Blackout Hong Kong that I played and just like really bounced off of super hard. So I was kind of feeling like, oh, Fister, like you're awesome game designer clearly, but like you need to go back to doing lighter fare. I think that is your strong suit. And here's Boonlake, the heaviest game of them all, as far as I know, that he's ever designed. Capstone Games. I'm gonna try it out, and Brendan, this game is so incredible.
Oh no.
This game is awesome. This was probably the single best experience I had. I mean,
Wow.
maybe Riftforce is my game of the con, but maybe it's actually just like Boonlake. Definitely the game I've been thinking about the most. And I I'm just like really not a heavy gamer. Not that I don't like heavy games, just I just don't have they just don't fit into my lifestyle. Like when I play games, generally I'm playing with less uh,
Experienced gamers. Yep.
experienced gamers, so we don't play heavy stuff. And when I'm playing with like very experienced gamers, they're like very busy people, and we don't play for 4 hours typically. So it's just really hard to fit in long games. And I think Boon Lake was like, I think our play was like 2 hours and 30 minutes at 4 players with like another 45 minutes for the teach. So it was a long, heavy game experience. But that doesn't mean I don't like heavy games, but it's just like so rare that I find a heavy game that I'm like, how am I going to like acquire this game and find time to play it? Because I think it's absolutely deserving of that. And I think like honestly, not since playing A Feast for Odin have I felt like I want to own this game and I want to find time to play it again. Like basically I've only played A Feast for Odin like on my birthday. That's like my game that I'll play on my birthday because that's the only time I really get the chance. And I feel like Boon Lake 2023 birthday game. Like I
Nice.
think it's that good and like deserving of time.
It's a Rondell
So
game, like Great Western Trail and Maracaibo. Yes.
um
Kinda time track
definitely
game.
not. I haven't played Maracaibo. That's the
Yeah.
other thing Boon Lake has done is like it's made Maracaibo shoot up on my list of things to try to like number one. Like I'm actually like really want to try Maracaibo now because people I was playing with were like, you gotta try Maracaibo if you like this. But so Boon Lake, it has a sort of rondel mechanism, but it's more like a track. So you have like a
Yeah.
river that you're proceeding down, and it does loop back once and then it proceeds to the end. And I mean, let's see, this game is just like, you know, this game like absolutely trips all over itself to be like, this isn't like a settlement style colonizing game,
But it is. It was
but
designed
it's,
that way.
I mean,
Yeah.
100% it's like the same mechanisms.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, like it's not for me to like say whether or not like that's acceptable to just say like, okay, this isn't like the American West. It's like
A made up place
West.
called Boon Lake.
It's like Westworld, basically. There's like some
Yeah.
weird like science fiction notes, like in this, like some like
Yeah.
kind of like technology stuff happening on the board that seems like doesn't really fit in with the landscape or whatever. So I mean, not for me to say, but like, I mean, it didn't bother me in the play. Like I think it's good that people are more conscious of these things now. I mean, it's better than just being the American West and totally whitewashing it, I think. But anyway, I mean, like, so in this game, what you're doing is like you're exploring the land. So you're
Yeah.
taking tiles from a board and you're placing it onto a grid. And when you do that, whenever you cut, you'll cover up a spot on the board and get a bonus that has the newly explored lands. Will have spaces that you can put down your inhabitants, not settlers, inhabitants, because nobody was there before, so you don't settle it, you just inhabit
Oh
there
God.
because nobody was there. So that's the difference. So you
Oh.
put your inhabitants there, and then you can upgrade your inhabitant into a house, and then you can upgrade your house into a settlement. So I mean, that's the type of vibe. Like, the settlement is like the exact same wooden piece that is in
Catan.
Catan. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, like, the core of this game, and I think why I love it so much, is like this is really a card game. So there's a huge deck of cards like that have all kinds of unique, different abilities. There's just so much clever stuff in this game.
Mm.
But basically, on your turn, you'll pick an action, and it's kind of has a Praga Kaput Regni situation where you take an action. The ones that are higher up towards the top give you the benefit of being able to move further down the river where you'll get better benefits. And then after you get that, you'll put that to the bottom and slide everything up. So it's like Praga, but just like way more intuitive to understand how it's
And,
like working and benefiting you.
and you get to set tempo, I'm understanding, for everyone at the
Yes.
table. Interesting.
Exactly.
Okay.
So the tempo is very fluid. And then on each of those cards, like, it has two parts. So the first part is like you get to do alone, and the second part everybody gets to do. So uh, you know, unlike the very light Four Guardians where everybody's like on their phone, like in this game, it's like you are engaged 100% of the time because like they're taking their action and you should be thinking, okay, what am I going to be doing with the second part of this thing so I can be like ready to go, boom, boom, boom. And I've heard like, I mean, I listened to some reviews of this game. Like, it kind of got panned on Game Brain, where they said
Mm.
like their play of this game took 6 hours. I was just
Ooh.
like, like,
What were you guys doing?
so this is like definitely a group dependent thing. But I mean, and even our friend Tony Faber kind of felt like critical of this component, feeling like it kind of like bogged down the game. But I just had a totally opposite experience with it, where it's like I think I was playing with a group of people that were engaged and like thinking ahead about what they kind of were gonna do. So it would sort of be like the person would do their main action and finish, and then everybody could kind of simultaneously just like, okay, I'm gonna discard this card to get 2 coins, or I'm gonna play this card, like boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
It didn't slow it down, and it also meant like I had to pee for like 2 hours. I'm playing this like super heavy game, and I keep thinking like there's gonna be a downtime. Like I'll just do it like right after my next turn, and it's just like I couldn't,
Why?
like I could not, like my like attention. I mean, eventually I was like, I gotta take a 5-second, like 5-minute break, or whatever, and that was fine.
That's
But
pretty good though. That's a good sign.
Really good. I mean, it just made me realize like how totally engaging and enthralling this game is. The I think like the other comparison to this game is so it's another Suchi game. It has very much an underwater city vibe to it.
Why?
So there's two reasons. The first is like on the actions, there are 3 different types. There's like daytime, evening, and nighttime. And when you pick an action, you can play a card that matches that type. So on your turn, you're incentivized to take ones that are higher up on the track, right? Or higher up on like the position so you can move further down the river. But you want to make sure you have a card that can like match with that before you take that. So that like has like this element of sort of pre-planning and making sure that you're going to be in position to like take advantage of the more advanced cards that I felt was really interesting. So that was one way that's kind of similar to that sort of card and action synergy is big in this game. But the other way was like there are these interim scoring periods. There's 4 in the game, or there's 3, and then there's end game. But in the interim scoring, it creates these like tempo games, like or what we would talk about as using our language, punctuated
Sure.
waning decision spaces or whatever, where you start out with resources and then you're like spending and spending and spending, and then in the interim scoring you're going to get like a huge influx of
Mm.
resources, cards and money, and it's going to get bigger each time. So you get to do like more and more, and you're parceling out, and then it's going down, and then like it's going back up. So like again on Two Wood for Wheat, Tony was really critical of this. He said he felt like it kind of like bogged down the game, but this was my like favorite part of the game because I felt like it was so much fun, like planning for that influx, like both trying to like stretch my resources to make it last, and also like put myself in a good position to like be able to score and take advantage of interim scoring, and then like getting all those resources again, like is and being like, okay, now I have like all this money and cards I can do all these fun things with. That was super satisfying. Um, and I think the most clever mechanism of the game, the thing I like the very most, is in the interim scoring, there are going to be, each person gets dealt like two goal cards at the beginning of the game, and you'll pick one to put it on the board. So there are four goal cards out. In the first round of the game, so on each goal, there's like four different uh, objectives to complete it. So mine was building settlements. So in the first round, you could complete it with 0 settlements out. So it is free. In the second round, you had to be able to score that one, you have to have 1 settlement. In the third round, 2. In the fourth round, 3. So they get harder and harder to score. So in each round, you get to put out a scoring token on one of the 4 settlement or 4 goals. And so in the first round, if you achieve it, you get 1 point. If you don't achieve it, you get -1. In the second round, it's 2 points or -2, so on and so
That's cool.
forth. With the notable exception that your scoring goal that you put out there, whenever you put your token on it, it's ×2. So the best way to play the game is to like score your goal in the fourth round where it's the least, or where it's the most valuable, right? So you get 4×2 as opposed to like 1×2. So I thought that was super clever and created this like really kind of compelling decision space each round about what to try and achieve. So like, for example, in my play, I chose to take a -1 in the first round because one of the goals involved like exchanging money for points. And I was like, you know what,
Yeah.
I'm going to let everybody else deal with this. I'm just going to focus on spending my money like profitably to like advance my engine and just like not worry about that at all. I'll take the -1 now, and then I'll have so much engine and money. I'll be able to build all my settlements and score mine in the last round. And what do you know, in the last round, I took a -8 because
Oh,
I was like one turn off of getting it. But it was like, I just thought that was a really interesting decision space. I mean, there's like these like lever things in this game that kind of give you allow you the opportunity to like construct your own unique individual player powers. Um, that like I'm like desperate to try out like different combinations of those. There's so much interesting stuff going on in this game. I really think like, I think it's an amazing design. I think it is group dependent. Some people obviously, if your group's AP prone at all, stay far away from this. But if you have some people that are like going to be engaged, going to pre-plan their turns, there's no reason why you can't play this game in 40 minutes per player, like it says on the box. I mean, we did with 4 new players.
it sounds like it truly has that fister hook of a truly engaging and different decision space every time, which makes me interested, even if I think that the hand waving around the theme is just like painfully embarrassing and rough. But you clearly love it, so now I'm definitely intrigued and I want to learn more.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
What can
I
you
don't
do?
know. Theme is like, it's a difficult topic that I think the entire industry is like grappling with.
Yeah,
So
better
I don't
next
know.
time.
To me, it feels like a little bit like, and again, I'm not an authoritative voice on this at all, but like it feels to me like, don't let perfect be the enemy of the good, right? Like they're definitely taking steps in the right direction, and I don't know that like we want to be in a place at a hobby that like there can't be games where you're constructing buildings on land.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. I agree. I think that don't let perfect be the enemy of good, but maybe we could go even further.
Definitely. And we should continue to encourage people
And
to
we
go
want
further.
Fister to do
Absolutely.
better. That's
Yes.
the crux.
Yeah.
But next week, no theme at all, except for maybe some random foxes you collect, and that's so clever. I hope you all enjoyed this episode where Jake did an incredible feat of reviewing 14 games in almost 90 minutes. Almost 60 minutes, but 90 minutes. Yeah, it's just a little... we're
close
reversing it.
enough.
Yeah.
Listen to it in 2 parts.
Yeah. If you enjoyed this episode, know that let us know, please. You can catch up with us in all the classic places. Check out the show notes for more info on that. I'm not going to do any specific plugs this week, but you should check out our website, decisionspacepodcast.com, where you can learn more about everything Decision Space, and also find links to where you can learn more about me, Brendan Hansen, and Jake Friedman.
Yeah, and it doesn't count as a plug if you say
I'm not going to do
not
it.
a blog. Yeah.
See you all next week.
See you next week. And thank you, as always, to Hembry for allowing us to use their amazing song, Reach Out, as our intro and outro music. All right, bye all.